at the end of the day, I stand strong in my faith and who I am, and I know the content of my character, so they can say those things, but it's not going to affect me the way that they want it to.
We've been talking on the podcast about whether the government is intentionally or unintentionally trying to separate parents from their children, trying to sort of take over the role of a parent in a lot of ways. There's a law that's fairly new in Washington state that allows kids over the age of 13 to make a wider range of medical decisions by themselves without a medical provider being able to inform that child's parents. You can just imagine that, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old making serious medical decisions completely on their own without their parents being informed. It's quite controversial, and I understand why. There is a dad in Snohomish, Washington, which is about an hour outside of Seattle, who has found out the consequences of this law firsthand. He posted a TikTok about it, and it's now gone viral because it was picked up and posted by the account Libs of TikTok. Here's that video.
I'm going to try to make this short. If you have teenage kids in Washington State, watch this video. I get a call today from the counselor at the high school, Snohomish, Washington. They proceed to say, your child, 15 years old, did not pick up his antidepressants at the end of the school year. I said, he's not on antidepressants. Like, what are you talking about? My kid is not depressed. I got that in my teeth, forget it. And they proceed to tell me that they had a psychiatrist come to the school and give my kid antidepressants, and he's been on them for several months. I had no knowledge. I knew nothing about it, knew nothing. Come to find out, it's 100% legal. They could do whatever they want with our kids in Washington State in the school program.
The man in that video is Eli Holt. He joins us on unDivided. Eli, I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
Sure you never imagined you'd be thrust into the spotlight by being featured on Libs of TikTok?
I would not imagine the hate that has came with it. Absolutely not.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of that. So you took to TikTok, and we'll get to obviously the reason behind it, but how quickly did Libs of TikTok pick that up and then sort of this traction happened?
So it took about 48 hours. I would say within 72 hours, there was multiple reports and sharing of the video and news articles being made where people were just bashing me, saying that I'm abusive. I probably hit the kids in my house, like just the most ridiculous things. I do want to clarify. So he is not my son.
Correct.
My husband and I have custody of our nephews. So he is my nephew, but he is a child in my home.
So are you his legal guardian?
Correct.
Okay. So anything legally speaking that a parent, his biological parents would have control of, that now you have control of?
Correct.
Okay. So talk to me. We've just watched the video, but take me through sort of the sequence of events that led to that video where you were obviously very upset about what had transpired.
So I was at work. I got a phone call, and I do want to clarify a few things. So one of the things that had happened is, my nephew comes from a broken place, right? There is issues within the family that needed to be addressed. Obviously, that's why we had him. I had agreed with the school for him to see the school counselor and speak with them. So there was no knowledge given to me about any antidepressants or any medication. So I'm at work, I get a phone call, and it's the counselor at the school. And she says, hey, did not pick up his prescription for his antidepressants for summer vacation. My immediate response, as somebody who's been on antidepressants, been off of antidepressants, and had a negative experience from it, was, I'm not okay with this. She literally laughed in my face over the phone. She was visibly, I could hear her laughing at me over the phone. So of course, that made me more upset. So I proceed to tell her that he's not on antidepressants. I had no knowledge of it. She laughs at me. I asked for the name of the medication. She would not give it to me. And then I ended up telling her, I'm going to end the call. You're not being professional. You're being extremely rude. I end the call. And then within 1 minute, I get a text from my nephew of her texting him saying, hey, I just talked to your uncle. He seemed upset. Blah, 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 blah. So not only was she extremely disrespectful, but within 1 minute, she was texting my nephew on his cell phone to basically give him warning that, hey, your guardian's upset.
So I don't want you to have to, please don't feel like you need to divulge anything about your nephew's health situation or anything like that. But had you had any sort of knowledge that he might need antidepressants?
Not with an antidepressant. So I had knowledge that or I don't want his name on
Okay, I'll beep
line,
that
but
out.
thank you. I had knowledge that he had moments of sadness, which I think is a common theme with most young adults. But my focus was like, let's change your diet, maybe exercise, get you a job. Let's do things to build confidence in yourself before even considering that route.
And so, as his uncle, I mean, would you characterize, your relationship as close? Like, if he felt like, hey, I think I need antidepressants, do you feel like he would have come to you?
Hands down, without a doubt. We have an extremely close relationship, as I do with most of the children in my life. I think that an open line of communication is extremely important. There isn't anything from, just anything, whether it's like smoking pot or going to bonfires and drinking. There's nothing that hasn't been talked about and resolved, whether it was coming to an understanding that things need to be done responsibly or coming to an understanding that that specific thing is not okay and it's not going to happen. So the communication is extremely well in my household.
So, what do you think led to him getting antidepressants via the school as opposed to coming to you and saying, "Hey, uncle, I'm feeling down or whatever it is, and I think I need to go see a doctor"?
So what he told me specifically was that a psychiatrist came into the school and gave not just him, but several of the kids a test to take on paper. He took that test, and from that test, they deemed him depressed and that he needed antidepressants. So that is what he told me, was that he took a test on a piece of paper that said he needed antidepressants. He also clarified to me that he told the lady that was writing the prescription that his family struggled with addiction and that he wasn't okay taking the pills, and they advised him to do it anyway.
Wow. So one other thing that you clarified a few things in some follow-up videos when this really started to gain traction. One of the things you said is your nephew was under the impression that you knew that he had been prescribed these antidepressants, that you had been told.
Yes. So, and that isn't per se, like, I don't believe anybody told him I knew, but when I asked him, he was like, well, you talk to my case manager every day, like on a consistent basis. So he was really surprised that they hadn't mentioned anything about it to me.
So this whole ordeal aside, were you aware, just as a Washingtonian, that in this state, teens over the age of 13 can make some of these medical decisions without any knowledge or input from their parents or their guardians? Did you know that?
So I was aware that that the parent would not have access to the My Chart, but I was not aware that the child could make the medical decision solely on their own. So I knew that, like, as far as the My Chart went, that, the child has access to their My Chart at the age of 13, but I was unaware that they could give prescriptions, do the types of things that they're doing with their overreaching in the extent that they're doing it. I was completely unaware.
And it's something that we've talked about. I mean, it's a totally separate reason, but I had a conversation with a Washington state representative, and we were talking about the crisis of mass shootings in this country, and she was saying, like, look, we're separating parents from their kids and making it harder for parents to know what's going on with their kids. So I guess just from that perspective, as the parent to a 15-year-old, what would you want to change about that law, or what do you think should change about that law?
So I feel like this is a really sticky situation because it's such a divide between the left and the right, or difference of opinions. I believe that the parents have the right to parent the child and not the government. And I think that there's been an overreach as far as the things that the government is allowed to do within the household. And if you look statistically, all of the things that have shown antidepressants and what they've caused in juveniles are not positive. There's a lot more negative when it comes to the research that's been done. We are at an all-time high for juvenile suicide. Things are not looking great for our next generation. And it's our job to parent the kids in our household. I don't get to tell, Nancy Pelosi what to do with her nephew. I don't get to tell Joe Biden what to do with his son. The things that happen in our household, and when it comes to parenting, giving medication, and all of the other stuff I don't even want to speak of because it's so insane to me, the things that are actually happening, that's not their choice. It's our job to parent the kids that we're responsible for. And in my opinion, that's the bottom line. You don't get to come into my household, Go ahead.
You did say in the video that there are a couple instances where you could understand a child, having to make decisions absent their parents, like if there's abuse in the household or something like that.
Absolutely. I could understand if there was sexual abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, and there was obvious signs and the school was aware of it, right? And the school was saying, hey, how can we help you in this situation? What's going on? But typically, if those things are happening, there's going to be CPS involved. There's going to be other government officials. It's not just going to be the school handling that situation. So coming from somebody who's not in that situation, that doesn't have a household like that, my mind was just blown. I think that the laws that are being made in the legislative point of view is outrageous. You don't get to tell me how to parent my child, my nephew, my younger siblings. It doesn't matter who it is. If I'm responsible for them at the time, it's my word and what I want to happen. And I don't say that to sound controlling or anything, but I truly believe that I have the best interests of the child at heart when they're with me. I don't care if I'm at the beach and it's somebody else's kid. If they're in my eyesight, I'm responsible for them. So I'm going to do what's best for them in that moment. And the government.
You make a really good point, which is people who advocate for this type of law to give teens more control over their own, health or medical care. They say, well, what if there's abuse or whatever? There are laws for that. If there's an abusive home, the government has laws they can use to intervene, that are above and beyond private independent medical care. So it's a really good point. What kind of interactions have you had with the school since this went viral?
None. The last interaction I had with the school was the same day that she called me, and I called her back to say, hey, listen, you have no right to text. The school year is over. I pay that cell phone bill. I would appreciate it if you needed anything regarding the student, you contact me directly. And then she laughed at me and I hung up the phone, and that was the last contact we've had.
So with the video going out and it being picked up so many times, I mean, are you and your nephew, you've said you've talked and everything's fine, and now he is going to come to you in the future if there's anything like this?
Absolutely. So we have talked extensively just about how important it is that the adults in the household know what's going on with him, and to make sure that he feels comfortable coming to us with those issues, because we've covered a lot of topics. He's a teenager, you know what I mean? And there was never a point in time where I felt like I had to sit him down and say, hey, if somebody comes to your school and writes you a prescription, make sure you tell me, because in my mind, that's just not fathomable. It's not something that I've ever experienced. So now the topic's clearly been touched on, and he is doing amazing. He has a job, he has a girlfriend. He's like doing all these things to build his character and self-esteem. And my biggest issue is him understanding that you don't need a pill to be normal. You're okay exactly how you are. And there's not anything we can't work through in a positive way. And that's not to say that some people don't need those things, but there's other routes to take first.
So all of that aside, there's a separate issue of you kind of being thrust in the middle of this, social media storm. On one end, there's the political divide where it was shared by libs of TikTok because I think they see it as proof that the government is, interfering between parents and kids. But then you were also getting a lot of hate from random strangers about your parenting and just assumptions they were making about it. What are some of the most hurtful things people were saying?
I think so. I haven't read a lot of the comments, but I have an army behind me as far as the support and love from people in my life that are close to me that, some share the same beliefs, some don't, but everybody on every aspect has came to me with some of those comments. And I think the most hurtful thing is that I'm physically abusive, or that I must be punching my nephew in the face every time he has a disagreement with me, or that I am a fat faggot Trump supporter. They've called me out for my addiction, which I am extremely proud of the 6 years that I have clean. I've overcome things that most people would never. And so I do celebrate those. I've made TikToks about my clean time, the things I'm proud of, what's helped me in my journey. And now those things are being thrown in my face when I was making them, to help other people, to give inspiration, to let them know that, like, if I can overcome this, so can you. And now it's how I'm just this horrible, hateful person, and I spew nothing but negativity, and I'm abusive, and I'm a drug addict. And at the end of the day, I stand strong in my faith and who I am. And I know the content of my character, so they can say those things, but it's not going to affect me the way that they want it to.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me that you can make this video about something as clearly wrong as a school, getting your child a prescription without your knowledge. And then you have people who look at that from a political perspective and attack you as a parent, like, oh, you must be a really shitty parent then if the school went and did this and your nephew didn't tell you about it. You said you have an army behind you. You can add the undivided army too. We'll have your back. Let's end with this, Eli. What would your message be to lawmakers in your state of Washington, in Olympia, who voted for this law that allows kids to kind of take medical stuff into their own hands?
My message to them would be to stay out of essentially stay out of other people's households. We don't come into your household and tell you how to parent your children. We don't tell you what's right and wrong when it comes to your kids. The only time that you should be reaching into somebody else's household is if you have factual evidence of any type of abuse or neglect. And with that, they should just stay out of other people's business. They're overreaching.
Yeah. All right, Eli Holt, well, we appreciate you taking the time to join us on Undivided and to share the story behind the TikTok video. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, Brandi. Have a good day.
If you like this video, make sure to become an Undivided subscriber to help us grow this mission to give common sense a comeback. You can do that in two ways, at patreon.com/undivided or by becoming a contributor on my Locals community, brandikruse.locals.com. Thank you to the founding sponsor of Undivided, 1530 Mortgage. Visit them at 1530mortgage.com.